everybody, it's Heather here with our favorite lender, Ken Neat with Cross Country Mortgage. We're missing Colin today, but we're gonna jump in and give you the latest market update on stats, on mortgage industry news, rates, and stay tuned to the end because we are also gonna have two different pieces of billion-dollar news for you. We're gonna talk about the $1.8 billion lawsuit that's all over the national news. And we're gonna talk about a $1 billion sale that happened here locally. Okay, so for our stats, San Luis Obispo residential sales, according to California Regional MLS, prices have gone up again a little bit. We're at 849,000. So other than May of 2022, there hasn't been any other month in our county in all of history where prices have been as high as they are right now. And you would have had to known to time the market, put your house on the market on February or March of 2022 in order to close right at that month. You can't really.
Peak of May.
Yeah, so you can't really time the market any better than what we're seeing right now. Median days to sell is still 9, keeping in mind that that is only for the listings that actually sell because we do see overpriced listings just sitting there. The months of inventory creeped up a little bit. It's at 6 months of inventory where we had been sitting more around 4 or 5. But because the number of sales is only 202 right now because the inventory has been so low, the number of listings that are on the market right now in SLO County for residential is lower than ever. In the height, we had 440 houses trading each month in the summer around June and July of 2021 and 2022. So 3.5 months of inventory at that time would have been exactly 1,540 houses on the market or under contract for our entire county and all price points. And right now, even though we have 6 months of inventory, 6 months of inventory at only 202 sales a month means that we only have 1,212 properties on the market for all price points in our county, residential, active and under contract. So it's a lower number than what we're used to seeing. So it's still a great time right now for sellers. Sellers have less competition than ever. Buyers are starting to get excited about the market again. I'll let Ken talk about why. And prices are still very strong. And there are less homes to choose from for buyers, so it's an opportune time. So Ken, why are buyers getting excited this week?
Well, we've had some recent news from a rate standpoint that's been positive, and that's the first time in a while because every time we think we've hit a peak, bad news happens, rates get worse. So rates started with the 8s as recent as a week ago, and now we're back into the 7s pretty significantly. In the last 2 days, I locked a jumbo loan at 7.25, and today a conforming loan at 7.75, both at 0 points. And both of those scenarios would have been at least 0.5% higher within the last week. That was a result of the Fed pausing rates on Wednesday's meeting, which was anticipated, but the market has liked it since. And then today we did get a poor jobs report. The first Friday of every month we get a jobs report for the previous month, and they also carry revisions from the month prior to that. And they were all negative. So we're finally starting to get an accurate picture of what's really happening in the economy because the Fed just operates in the rearview mirror.
So just at the beginning of this year even, if we had said, rates are in the 7s, wouldn't have been with that tone.
Yeah, it's been a long time to say, to get excited about something that starts with a 7. But when we, look at the inventory issue and do the national stats of homeowners with a mortgage, 63% have a rate under 4%, homeowners with a mortgage under 5% is 80%, so that speaks to the inventory. But all the economists that we follow talk about as rates get into the 7s, into the 6s, and you're utilizing seller concessions to do buy downs or other things to be creative, we're bridging that gap that will bring inventory to the market and give buyers more opportunity as buyers still exceed sellers. So even though there's less to look at, most attractive properties have multiple offers or multiple interest.
We do have one more Fed meeting this year. What do you think is next for rates in the overall mortgage industry?
I do think they will continue to pause. I think the language of the Fed announcement today had a few changes in it to the previous month, and they're still trying to posture in a tightening stance, but I think that's posturing, and I do think they'll continue to leave it unchanged as the rearview mirror is going to start to reveal what's really happening.
And do you think that means that rates will stay exactly where they are right now, or will they come down a little bit more in response to the pause?
I think they will come down. I mean, the Fed controls a short-term rate. Obviously, mortgages are long-term rate, so it's an indirect relationship. But since the Fed's done this, they have really impacted mortgages dramatically, of course. So I think they will continue to improve if they do indeed pause, because the markets will like it, especially if there's another negative jobs report.
Okay, got it. So let's move on from stats and mortgage news. We promised you $2 billion topics. So the first one, many of you have probably seen in the news, there was a $1.78 billion lawsuit against National Association of Realtors and several large franchises. It was in the state of Missouri. And these lawsuits have been going on for years, so I don't know why this one all of a sudden is a splash all over. Maybe it's because there were a couple of franchises that settled, but it went from, seemed like just those of us who were in the industry were aware of these lawsuits and talking about what will eventually happen, or will there be any changes? And then now all of a sudden everybody and their mom knows that there's this big lawsuit against realtors. Yeah. So basically, without having to go into any of the nitty-gritty, but if you ever want to go into the nitty-gritty on any rates or the market or any of this stuff, just give us a call. But there were sellers in Missouri that sued their realtors, stating that they didn't understand or they didn't know that a portion of the commission, usually half as customary, was being paid to the buyer's agent. So I don't know anything about Missouri real estate. I don't know what their contracts look like, but apparently they were able to show this jury enough evidence that they didn't understand that the ruling went against the realtors. So this is still a long ways out from any kind of resolution or change to our industry, because NAR is definitely going to appeal, and it's going to take years. But we already heard more lawsuits are popping up. I think there's like 5 now. So other states will be jumping on. And my personal opinion is that it's just a money grab for the attorneys that represent class action suits, because if they can get a huge group of sellers together and they can make a case, if they win, the sellers are all each going to get a little dripping.
That's right. And
the attorneys are going to make a whole bunch of money. And in the end, even though there might be a lot of new ways of doing business implemented, either the seller is going to be paying the entire commission like they typically do now. Nobody's required to, but that's customary. Or if the buyer is paying it, then the buyer is going to offer less money. So. And the seller that started this lawsuit, they knew what they were paying. They weren't disputing that. They just said that they didn't know that half of it or a portion of it was going to the buyer's agent. And they probably didn't have any problem with it when they were the buyer.
100%.
And that seller was paying all of the commission. So the industry has gone to that type of format. I think it was in the 90s that we went to that format to solve a bunch of problems. And part of that is just first-time buyers don't necessarily have the money to pay their down payment, their closing cost, and realtor fees. So if they can just pay a little higher price for the house and the seller covers the realtor fees, then that problem is solved.
Exactly.
We also didn't used to have buyer agency at all. And some people think it should go back to that. Some of those attorneys might think that. But I can't imagine a first-time buyer without the representation, so that they have somebody that they can trust that's going to tell them what the property is really worth, what inspections they need to get, whether the seller disclosures were completed, and all the other stuff that we do. So
it's a lot to manage.
Yeah, if there is a shift, it's just going to create a whole new set of problems that were solved by the customary seller pays both realtors system. In the state of California, the standard forms that we use for any of us that are members of the California Association of Realtors do make it really clear that the broker has the ability to compensate the buyer's agent through the multiple listing service. The seller can even dictate how much is paid to the buyer's agent. So for that reason, I don't think we're going to see this kind of lawsuit here in California. I mean, you never know, but
That's true.
They definitely, most sellers would not be able to make the argument that they didn't know that they were paying the buyer's agent. So Ken, if we do a few years from now, once this is all said and done, see a shift towards buyers paying their realtor instead of the seller, how do you think that would affect most of the clients that you're working with, and how could that be handled?
The speculation that I listened to yesterday on one of the seminars on this topic was assuming that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac would allow for buyers to finance their buyer agent cost. So that would be one potential solution. Jumbo investors will typically follow Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines with their own additional overlays to be a little bit more strict. But then, of course, for example, a VA loan won't allow a buyer to pay fees like that. So that would be another avenue to have solved. So there's speculation that it could be financed. However, I don't know if it's going to be state specific, given how cars contracts are so buttoned up. It's going to be interesting for sure.
Yes, and we'll keep you posted. And now, as we promised you $2 billion topics. So if you haven't seen the other news, Dow Winery just sold for $1 billion. Incredible. So it's a $900 million upfront payment, and then there's the potential as the process moves on for another $100,000 to be paid to the Dow brothers. Pretty incredible. Oh, did I say billion?
You said 100,000.
100,000. Yeah, see, my brain can't comprehend
so
these
sorry,
billion-dollar numbers.
To ruin the edit.
No, I'm leaving that in.
Oh gosh. Okay.
So if you hadn't seen that news yet, wanted to make sure you all were aware that we now have a $1 billion winery here. Maybe more. That's the one that's sold.
So more attention for Paso Robles and the Central Coast.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what that does for our home values and more people moving to our area as they learn more and more about our incredible wine. So I think wine is a good way to end our market update.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned. We'll see you all in a month. Bye.